My name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I will have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe that they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today we have RJ Joseph. She is a Stoker Award nominated Texas based writer who earned her MFA in writing popular fiction from Seton Hill University and who must exorcise the demons of her imagination so they don't haunt her being. A lifelong horror fan and writer of many things, she joyously discovered and embraced writing in the academic arena about three important aspects of her life: horror, Black femininity, and popular culture. She has had works published in various venues, including the Halloween issue of Southwest Review and the streaming of Hill House, essays on the Haunting Netflix series. RJ is also an instructor at the Speculative Fiction Academy and a co host of the Genre Blackademia podcast. I recently had the opportunity to read her short story found in Slash Her, a Women of Horror anthology. The short story is entitled The Collector, which was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. She also has a new book called Hell Hath No Sorrow Like a Woman Haunted. Welcome to the show, RJ.
Thank you for having me, Miguel. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about, first of all, the short story that I read, The Collector. It's a short story, so I don't want to give away too much, but it's essentially a meet cute of a young woman and a man who meet in are they in school?
Yeah, they're in school.
Yeah, they're in school, and then they kind of get together, and then it leads to somewhere that you weren't expecting, and then that leads even further to something you weren't expecting. So yeah, I really enjoyed that story. So can you tell me a little bit about writing that story?
Yeah, thank you. I'm really glad that you dug it. It it was basically just like anything else that I write. It was inspired in part by real events. Okay, not like the later part, that wasn't real. That was all fiction.
Okay.
But the way my brain works is that this very ordinary thing can happen. And I'm looking at this thing unfold and I go, but what if it weren't quite like what it looks like? And so when I was finishing my undergrad, I was older. I was an older student, and I was often hit on by a lot of the younger guys that were also there on campus. And so there was this one little guy who was really he was trying really hard to, like, pitch his woo and all. And I'm just kind of, thinking, yeah, it's never going to happen, but we can chat, right? And he just increasingly, each time we would meet, like going to the parking garage, that part was accurately true.
Uh-huh.
He'd come up with these increasingly more weird things that he would say, and
Oh.
that he was really, like, really trying to get me to go out with him, but to do
Uh-huh.
like these weird things. And so I'm sitting there thinking the whole time, every time, if you could just take a walk inside my head, you would not think you were shocking me. You would run.
Yeah. Wow, that's basically the story right there. That's great.
Yeah. So that's how my brain works.
Okay. Okay. So he was shooting a shot and okay, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, but the weirdest thing, it was crazy the way he thought he was going about it, right? I was like, you don't understand that this is fodder for my writing, but you're thinking that I'm really digging this little vibe, this little serial killer, sadomasochistic kind of vibe that you're throwing out. I'm like, yeah, I'm digging it, but for a different reason. You don't even know why.
So the way my mind thinks, like if the story of you making the short story was a movie, like it would end with like you handing him the your short story and him reading and be like, "Holy shit! I just
Exactly.
yeah, I just dodged a bullet. I think she's threatening me."
Exactly. Yes.
That's great. So you also have a new book coming out in August called "Hell Hath No Sorrow Like a Woman Haunted." First off, great title.
Thank you.
Second of all, can you tell us a little bit about that story, about that book, I should say?
Oh, sure. It's a collection of horror short stories. Up till now, I've been primarily a short medium writer. So I write a lot of short stories, a lot of essays. and things like that. And it had just recently, as far as meaning recently as like maybe the past 4 or 5 years, that it occurred to me I could like collect those and put them in a collection. And so once I started kind of thinking about that. It was something that I just kind of had in the back of my head for quite a while. But then my brother in horror writing, Gabino Iglesias, came to speak at a conference I had on my campus. I'd invited him to come over. And I mean, he just blew everybody's minds. And of
Uh-huh.
course, in all that brilliance, it didn't occur to me that he was going to have one other stroke of brilliance when he says to me, "So, what are you working on?" And I was like, "Oh, this and that. I'm thinking about maybe putting out a collection and, one day." And so he kind of is like, "One day? Oh, you should totally do that." And then, like, ever so often, right after that, he would like pop up on Twitter or in the DMs going, "Hey, how's that collection going?" And so finally I went, "You know what? You're right. I really need to do this. I need to just pull it all together." And it wasn't that hard. I had gobs of short stories, and
Yeah.
so started sending it out to some publishers. And the Seventh Terrace is the one that picked it up, and I'm really excited to be working with them because I mean Sarah from over there hit me back like within a couple of hours of me sending it, and she goes, "I just read the first story, and consider yourself shortlisted. I am loving this." And so I'm really
Nice.
excited to be working with them because they seem excited about the book. And it's mostly short stories. I write about Black women. And I write about horror, write about the horror that surrounds us, that the horror that we embody, sometimes the horror that we enact. And so, I mean, it's a wild ride. It's so nothing like seeing your work like put all together like that to kind of realize your own trauma and to realize just how crazy stuff is in your own brain. Because when I had to edit this thing, I was like, "Oh, I never saw it all like laid out together like that. That's pretty that's pretty wild."
Yeah. So Gabino kind of bullied you into getting this story out there, this
Yes,
book
in
out there.
the
That's
very
great.
best way,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm that kind of person. Like I'll say, "Oh, maybe I'll do this thing," and then it never happens, right? Oh, so he totally knows my crazy, and so he was pretty instrumental and single handedly just getting me to the point to even pull that together and send it out in the first place. So I'm really thankful for that. Like he's a real go getter, and he really really believes in paying it forward, and he really, really believes in bringing along everybody that he possibly can. So I appreciate that about him.
That's great. That's really great. Uh, I met Gabino once at a book read. I'm sorry, at a reading that Andrew Hilbert had in
Uh huh.
Austin at Radio Coffee, and he showed up and read a story, and yeah, and it was great. He did a great job there. Um,
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is the intersectionality that you were talking about with Black women in your short stories and like and horror as well. Like, I think that that's so important and so it was so refreshing reading it in your story, like because in all aspects of American culture, like we're always inundated with white being the default, and so when it's not the case, it's like, oh wow, this feels so good, and it's been happening more recently. So with my starting this podcast and meeting more people in the horror community and in the writing community, like I've been reading more people of color's work, and I'm excited to meet Black people, especially Black women, because in all aspects of society, women are not as um, represented, and specifically in horror, black women aren't represented. So, like meeting you and getting to read some of your work and your work reflecting that, like it's so important. So, what do you how do you feel about your work with that intersectionality between horror and black women?
Well, it's like we talked about before before we got on air. I am an old head, so like I was born in the '70s, uh, and I've always been a horror fan. Right, like I've been. I mean, since I was a little kid, I'm talking 5, 6 years old, right? And so my father would put the horror movies on, and I just devoured them. He had horror books laying around the house, and so I picked them up. I read Carrie. I was like 6 or 7. I didn't
Oh,
understand
nice.
everything in it, but I read it, and I
Yeah.
just knew that it was monsters. The cover, the girl is there's blood, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so into it. But the one thing that was always missing was black people.
Right.
Like, I mean, I saw Blackula, not when it was first run. Like, I was like a really little baby then, but
Yeah.
like after the fact. And I thought, how amazing is this? All these beautiful black people, this eloquent black Dracula. And I'm like,
It's,
why don't we have more of this? Why is this really not a thing? And
yeah.
so as we go through the 70s, then the 80s, you start to kind of have this sort of a token black person. Usually they don't make it to the end of the story. And,
Mm,
so, I mean, because I cut my horror teeth on Stephen King and John Saul and Dean Koontz's horror rating. It wasn't until I was a young adult that I actually realized that black women could actually create horror. I mean, I had been doing it, but I'm like, I'm here in Texas. I mean, man, come on. Here in Texas, the black
yeah.
folks ain't trying to talk about horror. We ain't trying to do all that.
And not in the South, but
Especially
in the Bible Belt.
well, exactly. And I was about to say, and I was raised Southern Baptist too. So, oh
Okay.
no, like I spent a lot of time on the altar being prayed for because these dark thoughts. And my granny was just like the queen of Southern Baptist church, right? So, it was kind of an uphill struggle. Like I knew that there were black women who could create horror. I mean, like I have been in this body my whole life, and I'm like, there's lots of horror just related just to that. Like just not
Right.
just being a black woman, but also I always wanted to be the monster. I'm like, I want to be the monster sometimes too. And then,
Hell
of
yeah. I
course,
love
when I
it.
get out into society and I'm actually labeled a monster, I'm like, oh, so regardless of what I do, I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be the monster. I'm going to be undesirable. Well, I tell you what, how about we just lean into that then? Let's just lean into it. I'll be the monster. I'll
Yeah.
be every monster you want me to be. And
That's
so I
great.
think it's really important because there's so many black women who are fans, right, and who are creators, and we just don't always get those same breaks that other creators do. And so when I see something that is imbued with like these black experiences, which are not a monolith, right? Like I get
Mm,
that every black woman's experience is not like mine, and that's great, that's wonderful. But all these stories need to be told. And so it's really important to me that this is how my characters come to me. I don't feel like, I know some people are like, well, if you're just only doing black people, writing about black people, then aren't you being the racist? Well, no, actually, I'm
oh God.
not. There is not that's not a thing. Like
Yeah.
that whole reverse, that is not a thing. And because we don't have a lot of this, we don't have a lot of horror medium that centers black women, that centers black women's experiences. So I feel like I don't care if I write 100 books about black women and horror and things like that. There's still not going to be enough. Still never will compete with the number of other works we have. So no,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
No.
no, I'm going to keep doing it.
And recently, like I've noticed, after Jordan Peele, Get Out and Us, and then most recently Nope, which I just saw. Yes, had an opportunity to see yesterday in the theaters, and it was great.
Yes,
But
yes. Oh my gosh, me too. Yes.
okay. So like after 2017, we kind of saw an uptick in it, which is great. I mean, we even had like horror stories centered around black women. With shoot, was it hair or good hair or bad hair? Was it bad
Yes. Uh
hair?
huh. Yes.
Yeah. So that one was specifically about a black woman who wore um, was it a weave or a wig? I'm forgetting
Uh huh.
what it was. And that one, like, it was good. It was cool. But I love to see like black women centered in horror stories. And then we had um, Master earlier this year,
Yes. I
which
loved Master. Oh my gosh.
which was definitely like a horror movie like none I've ever seen.
Yes.
It came at it from a different
Absolutely.
angle. And okay, let's talk
Yes.
about the ending of that movie because I talked to a couple people about it, and I was a bit confused. So, spoiler alert here for the ending of Master. Give it about a minute. I'll only talk a minute on it. So the ending to me. Oh, so spoiler alert. 3, 2, 1. Okay. So the ending to me, it seemed like it was it was a social horror, right? Because she was surrounded by all these white people, which
Hmm.
is absolutely infuriating the way they treated her. And then there's also a ghost story, but at the end, she just kind of decides to she nopes out. Basically, she's like,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not. If it was any other movie, like the white protagonist would have like gone back to the house and try to exorcise that ghost or something like that. She was just like, "Nah, you already killed somebody. I'm down. I'm out." It was that. Is
Yeah.
that what you got from it, basically?
Well, I think so. For me, that ghost was still very social, right? It was kind of like seemed like it represented to me that specter that's always going to be there. Especially for black women, like in academia, like I'm a black woman in academia, so like this is a
Yeah.
real thing.
Oh,
So like there's gonna always be this specter that haunts us anyway. So to me, the question was always, is the ghost real? And even if the ghost is real, how is she any different from me? Like
right.
she's a casualty of racism and sexism. I'm a casualty of racism and sexism. My student was, this other professor kind of was, even though she was real sketchy from the beginning. um
Yeah.
Anyway, so I just kind of really thought that that was brilliant in how we're always going to be haunted. Like the ghost is always going to be there. And I'm not sure that I think the reason why she noped out was because she's like, I can't erase this. I came here, I tried. Like I couldn't
Yeah.
exercise it if I wanted to. Like I'm going to be haunted by it forever too.
And it also felt like it was saying something about the working in the system. Like you cannot, no matter how hard you try, sometimes it feels like you can't change the system, even from within it. I know people say that you
Yes.
have to be in the system to change it, but she was in the system. She was the was headmaster of the school, and
Uh-huh.
she was surrounded by a board who like you know just wasn't supportive in the way that she needed. They were fake supportive, right?
Exactly.
And so she realized for herself that she couldn't change it, and so she decided to change her situation, which is the only thing she could change, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, so Audre Lorde, one of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to mess this up, so I'm just going to paraphrase it. She basically says, there's no way that you can dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Right. So so
Exactly.
there's kind of this prevailing idea. Well, let's just permeate everything. Let's just kind of assimilate. Let's get in and bust it out from the inside. But the reality is, if you're still playing by those rules and by playing the game with those tools, you really probably aren't going to get anywhere because those rules are so firmly entrenched that assimilation or even pretending to play by them only feeds into the system and makes it even bigger and makes it even stronger and harder to overcome. And so in the end, I was really happy to see her choose herself, because trying to work from within these systems is very exhausting.
Mhm.
Like being on campus with my students. Like I teach at a community college, and I see them. They come in, they're bright young adults, and they're ready to take on the world, but I'm in this system, and I'm kind of thinking, how can I best serve them?
Yeah.
I don't think I can best serve them by telling them play the game the way everybody wants you to play it. Now, I'm not that radical, Professor Rhonda, right? But any of my students who might hear this are like, oh, really? Because I'm always encouraging them, learn how to use your words effectively, learn how to write and communicate effectively so that you can use that to do whatever you want to do. So it's not like I'm telling folks, go flip some tables, but I mean, I wouldn't tell them that, but if we got to do it, we got to do it. Let's burn everything down.
I love it. I love it. So actually, we talked a little bit about your history with horror, and you were talking about as a child, your father had a lot of horror books around the house and movies and the like. How about growing up? Did you have a lot of friends who are also interested in horror? I know you said that you grew up in the church, so I'm not sure if that. Well, RJ, I have so many questions for you. So first, let's step back. Did your father was your father also in the church?
He was non-practicing,
Okay.
so it was his mother and father who were really, really big on the church thing. My mother was also, but I never saw my daddy go to church. like
Okay.
until his mother passed away, and so I'm at the funeral. So he was kind of not practicing like at all.
Okay.
Um,
And that
and
kind of
so
allowed him or to like be more in the horror genre or this horror sphere.
I think so.
Okay.
Because as terrible as my father was, the one thing that I will always credit him with was introducing me to horror.
Mm.
So he was always watching horror and sci-fi on TV. So there was no dearth, right? There was no emptiness there. Like there was always the Twilight Zone was on TV. I watched a lot of the black and white monster movies, the creature from Black Lagoon and all of
Oh,
this stuff. And
nice.
so the fact that it was always on the TV at home and then the books were laying around, because my mother was a big reader too, but she wasn't into horror or
Okay.
sci-fi. She was more into romance. Um, so I do think that a part of him stepping back may have helped him to be a big fan of these of the speculative fiction genre. I know for me though, I found that being in church, like when my granny would take us to church, that to me was like the biggest, scariest thing ever. Like
Yeah. That's
I did a
terrifying.
reading. Yes, I did a reading in Austin once, and I when I was asked, "What is the scariest book you ever read?" And I'm thinking, I'm here amongst my people. It'll be okay if I tell the truth. And I go, the Bible. Like, have you ever read it? I mean, I've read it several times, and it's terrifying. I mean, of course, when you tell people that, though, they kind of go, I mean, like, everybody in the bookstore kind of clutched their pearls. And I'm thinking, but this is Austin. I thought I was in around my people, but I still got to remember it's still Texas.
Yeah.
It's still like, Southern Baptist kind of Pentecostal territory. So,
Yeah.
uh, I think that was part of what instigated, like, not just the fear that's in the Bible, but like, have you ever been to a Southern Baptist church? Like, the preacher is kind of fire and brimstone usually,
Uh,
and I mean, there's this whole, you gotta repent. That is terrifying. Like, not doing what you're supposed to do is terrifying.
I've never been to a Baptist church. I grew up as a Roman Catholic, but I left that
Hmm.
behind long ago. I'm an atheist now, but yeah, we would have religion class every day, and we would go to
Yes,
church weekly, and we would have confession weekly, and so yeah, reading the Bible is terrifying, and also
yes,
for me, reading the Bible is the quickest way to not be religious because
sure,
you see the hypocrisy and all of that. So that's not my end,
yes,
and
yes.
so yeah, I completely agree with you on that. So how about your friends growing up? Like, did you have a friend circle that also was interested in horror?
Oh no, 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 no,
No,
no,
okay,
no, no,
same
no,
same. I
no,
had the
no,
same. Yeah.
no. So not only was I in the church, so like that was mostly family. Though it was like a little small church, so just about like my mama would say, everybody is your cousin. Leave them alone. They're all your cousins, right?
Don't look
And
at him. That's a
so
cousin.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They're all your cousins. Just leave it. They're your cousins. And so I spent a lot of time in church when I was younger. Uh, but again, these are cousins. They weren't really interested in that whole thing because they didn't want to come play with me up on the altar all the time, getting prayed for like that. So and then when I was at school, there just weren't a lot of kids that were into that. And I was in the inner city. So I was raised in the hood in Houston. And so, I was surrounded by other little kids like me, we're poor, we're of color, and there just weren't a big interest in horror. I never encountered that all throughout school. Well, I take that back. When I went to high school, the population was a little more mixed. Even though I went to school in an area of town here that's predominantly Latino and Black. Um, there were a couple of kids that I kind of then encountered who were into the horror thing, but it wasn't the other Black kids. So it was kind of like I had these different personas. Like I learned that early. You have these things you can talk about with these people. You have these things you can talk about with these people. Then you have this group of people you can talk about this stuff. And so I just learned really to just compartmentalize that because not here, not in my general vicinity. Even to this day, like I have friends who are willing to buy my work. They might even read it, but they are say in a minute, I don't like horror. I don't engage with it, but I'll read
Mm,
yours, right?
yeah.
So no, I had to broaden my horizons to find horror people.
Right. So you and I actually met at Ghoulish Book Festival, which was put on by Max Booth the Third and Laurie Michelle earlier this year in San Antonio. And while I was there, I saw so many different types of authors. There was people of color. There was different sexual orientations. There
Mhm.
was, it just felt like a big community of people who were just willing to help. Kind of like you were saying with Gabino earlier, where
Mhm.
everybody was willing to help out and support everybody and all that sort of stuff. And so it felt good to because I've never had that community
Oh.
of like-minded people. So to
Uh-huh.
be in a community like that was really, it felt really, really good. And he's, so what was your experience at Ghoulish Fest?
Oh, I loved Ghoulish. I loved it. Like it was, I'm. We don't get to have a whole lot of nice writerly things here in Texas, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so I'm used to having to. It's crazy because Houston is this huge city, and yet we just don't have a ton of literary things happening, and they especially do not focus on horror. And so I'm used to traveling for that kind of stuff. And I was really excited to be there. I'm like you. I was excited to see all kinds of people. I was like, oh my gosh, there are young people, there are older people. Like I was so glad to see our middle aged gray hair contingent kind of represented, right? I was
Yeah.
like, yes, like we are still here. Um, and so it was really exciting. I know that there's an enormous amount of work that goes into planning these events and actually making sure that they happen as smoothly as possible. And so I'm really glad that Max and Lori took that on because we need something like that. Now, I know there's KillerCon in Austin. Like, I know that's a thing. And
Yeah.
I've never been. Like, I think I attended virtually maybe last year or the year before, but I'll get to KillerCon at some point. It just happens at this crazy time of year for us, like right before school starts, and I'm like, I got a lot of kids at home. I can't play right now. I gotta go do this stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but I really enjoyed Ghoulish because it felt like a community. Like I was fortunate that the first time I was actually in fellowship with my fellow horror people was when I went to grad school. I mean, and again, I was an older
Oh,
student,
nice.
was a much
Yeah.
older student, and I only just finished my MFA in 2013. So I'm like, that's only 9 years ago, right?
Uh-huh.
And I fell in with the horror group there, even though I went as a romance writer. So I haven't always been able
Really?
to embrace. Yes,
Huh.
I write romance too, like very sporadically and kind of, not recently. But yeah, my thesis is a romance novel
Huh.
because I
Okay.
had been so. I don't like to use the illusion. I'd always been closed in as a horror writer. So I didn't just talk a lot about it, that I actually do this thing. I write it, wasn't sending it out a lot. And so I fell in with the horror crew over at Seton Hill. And it's crazy because they're like, oh my gosh, we really love you. Are you sure you're a romance writer? And I'm kind of looking at them like, well, of course I am. And they're like, no, you're one of us. And so, yeah, no, they embraced me wholeheartedly. And so it wasn't until even just then that I kind of went, I am a horror writer. I can
Mhm.
embrace that. I can love it, and this is great. And those were my people, so I have to credit them. That was the first time I was actually in fellowship with a group of horror writers. So I feel you on that whole community thing. It's so important.
Yeah, and that's so funny you said because it's a huge aspect of your story is the romantic relationship, obviously, right? But
Yeah,
the way you write it, it's like 70% horror, like 30% romance, and
exactly.
yeah, and so when you said that you actually got your MFA in romance, like that makes sense to me. Like
Yeah.
so it
Okay. Thank
perfectly
you for
translates.
that.
Yeah,
So I don't feel
for
like it
sure.
was wasted, right?
No. So then, let's first of all, can you tell before we get into the movie, say if you can let my listeners know how they can follow you on platforms, how they could support you, how they can buy your books, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I'm always on Twitter. You probably have noticed that. It's like the easiest social media for me. And so
Yeah,
I just kind
same.
of, yeah, I can't play with all the other ones. It's a bit much. So I'm always on Twitter at R Jackson Joseph. I have a website being built, like finally, because all these years I just never had one, and I needed it. And so it'll be up soon at rondajacksonjoseph.com. Um, and so those are probably the two easiest places to reach me. Uh, because everything else is kind of linked through there. So
Okay, and that's where they would be able to go to buy your books.
yeah, exactly.
For
Yeah,
the,
if you go to
okay.
Twitter, there's like the whole Amazon link, and I'm like, yeah, this is where all the titles are. You can buy them wherever you want, but
Yeah.
that's the best place to go to find them all.
Okay. Great. So then let's get started here. So you came on to confess your horror sin of never having watched Chopping Mall from 1986. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So why do you feel that this particular movie passed you by? Is it something where you had never heard of it, or you had, but it just get it was on the list, but you never got to it, that sort of thing?
It's well, when I looked at the movie came out in like 85 because I was
Mm.
like, how did I never see this? So I was 14 at the time.
Okay.
I was on my way to high school. And honestly, a movie in the middle of all these other slasher movies, because like
Yeah.
that's also the era of Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween. I just think that I overlooked it in all of the other blockbuster things.
Yeah, yeah, completely. I completely understand. I mean, but you said in something you said kind of resonated with me. You said in the midst of all these other slashers, but that's exactly what Chopping Mall is. It's a slasher movie with robots as the slashers, right? It's
Right,
amazing. It's so
right.
great. All right, so let's talk a little bit about it. So the movie was originally released in March of 80. It says 86 here, it might be 85,
Mm-hmm.
but under the title Killbots.
Mm-hmm.
But it performed poorly, and the producers felt the movie's title turned off audiences. So after some time, they re-released it to theaters under the title Chopping Mall, and they actually chopped out 15 minutes. So
Oh,
I thought another title for this movie could be ACAB, AKAB, All Killbots Are Bastards.
yeah, yeah, yes, it could have been. Yes.
So this was written and directed by Jim Wynorski, who's a B movie directing legend. He worked with Roger Corman his whole career.
Mm-hmm.
He made The Lost Empire, which was seen. A lot of the posters and the backgrounds of this movie were Corman produced movies.
Mm.
So like The Lost Empire, which Corman directed, and most he's still directing in 2022. Most recently, he directed Attack of the 50-Foot Cam Girl in 2020, and then Revenge of the 50-Foot Cam Girl in 2022.
Yeah.
So I think he's taken a slight dip in quality there, but I'm sure they're still fun, right? And it was also written by Steve Mitchell, who primarily did was a writer on the GI Joe cartoon from the 80s.
Mm.
So starring Kelly Maroney as Allison, and we know Kelly from Night of the Comets,
Mm-hmm.
which is a great zombie movie. If you haven't seen that one, please check that one out. Barbara Crampton as Susie. Of course, Barbara Crampton is a legend as well.
Yes.
She was in Reanimator and Bride of
Mm-hmm.
Reanimator. And then also Nick Siegel as Greg, John Terlesky as Mike, who we'll talk about Mike. This fucking guy was a character, right? He's always chewing gum. Yeah, we'll get to Mike.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Tony O'Dell as Ferdy, Russell Todd as Rick, Carrie Emerson as Linda, and then legendary B movie actor Dick Miller as Walter, the janitor.
Uh-huh.
He's been in movies such as The Terminator, The Burbs, Gremlins, The Howling, and so many others. He's a legend. Um,
Yes, he is.
the movie was made by Concord Pictures, which was one of Roger Corman's distribution companies. Roger's a legendary B movie director, producer, and writer. He is credited with over 500 executive producer roles, 56 director credits, 10 writing credits, and 45 acting credits. This dude is 96 years old. He's still alive.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's great.
Some of the movies he produced is Little Shop of Horrors, the original and the remake, The Mask of the Red Death, and The Brood, which is early Cronenberg. Some of his writing credits are Little Shop of Horrors as well, and The Fast and the Furious, the original one. And then he actually licensed the title to the producers of that new one that came out in 2000. You know, the one that everybody knows now. But Specifically, Chopping Mall was executive produced by his wife, who's also producer of 39 films, including Boxcar Bertha and The Dirt Bike Kid. So that was a bit of the background of the movie. So now I just want to get into talking about it. So the movie starts very quickly. We see a jewelry display case filled with what looks like expensive pieces, and then the camera pulls back to reveal that we are actually in a mall. And there's this great synthy, like 80s music already.
Right.
I know you said you're a huge fan of the 70s and 80s. I am too, and the music is part of that.
Hmm.
This soundtrack is amazing.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So suddenly a shadow approaches the display. We see the man's face briefly before he looks away and smashes the store window and grabs all the jewelry and walks away smiling. He thinks he's gotten away, but then we hear something, the sound of an engine. We see tank tread going over red carpet. The thief is stopped in his tracks by a robotic synthesized voice saying, "Stop right there." Well, I can't do it, right? "Stop right there." He turns to see who said it and pulls his strap. Again, "Stop right there and surrender your weapons." And then we get a close up shot of the killer robots looking pretty sick. It's reminiscent of a Dalek from Doctor Who. I'm not sure if you're familiar. Have you seen Doctor Who?
I have seen episodes.
Okay, yeah. So
Hmm.
the robot in there, they're called Daleks. It's kind of giving me Dalek vibes, and
Hmm.
it has a single eye that goes the width of its head, and it looks like a Cyclops from the X-Men.
Yeah.
So defiant, the thief unloads his revolver, but doing no actual damage to the robot. He's stunned. He runs away, and the robot is in hot pursuit. As it gets closer, the robot fires stun bullets at the thief, which neutralizes him instantly. The robot then drives up to the criminal and looks at the camera. We then see the end, a Securetronics production. And so it's been a video that we saw. We saw a film, a presentation being held for a group of investors and store owners. A woman introduces Dr. Stan Simon, the head of development for Securetronics, and he comes to the stage to take questions. But before he does, he unveils the robots, the Protector 101 series robots. I think they look great. What did you think about the design of the robots overall?
Oh, the design of the robots I thought was really cool. In the beginning, like as the movie progressed, I was kind of like, okay, but okay, whatever. But yes, that initial thought was, oh, this is cool. What could
Yeah.
possibly go wrong?
Anything with like a laser eye is automatically like great in my books. Like I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
This is like the I don't know, man. This is like the epitome, like the pinnacle of this feels like the pinnacle of like 80s horror. We got synth pop, we got robots, we have a mall, we have sexy teenagers, we got
yes,
partying going on. Like a lot of people
yeah.
like talk shit about this movie, but I think it's a fun, like it's a really great movie, you know?
Yeah, well, it's also like very. I mean, because I was there, I was in the '80s, and like this is what was actually happening. I mean, not killer robots, right? But I mean, like
Okay.
teens in the mall. That was a thing. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, it felt like a documentary almost.
Yeah, exactly. It really did.
So he says that the robots will go live 1 week at closing. And then a couple in the crowd is kind of making comments. And the man says of the robots, the one in the middle has an unpleasant ethnic quality. So I was like, fuck this dude. Automatically, I don't like
Exactly,
him.
exactly. He was so
But they
annoying.
but they kept going back to this couple. And even in the end, they got a credit, a photo credit. And I was like, who are these people? So I had to look it up. He's actually Paul Bartel and she is Mary Warnoff.
Mhm.
They started a movie called Eating Raoul as gourmet cannibals who lure sex swingers to their apartment, smack them with a skillet, rob them, then use the proceeds to buy a restaurant. And so in this movie, they
Ah,
actually mention possibly being able to use the Killbots in their restaurant. So it's kind of a
okay.
yeah. So he's kind of making an in joke for people who
Yes, yes. Okay, see that actually gives them a better purpose because I thought, what crappy writing is this that you have to give all the foreshadowing and these couples being all snarky, but now that makes sense. Okay.
yeah. And I was the same way. I'm like, why are we focused on these people? Because we never see them again. They never
Right,
show up
never.
again.
Yeah.
But the Eating Row was produced by Roger Corman, and
Mhm.
so was this movie. So that's why they had them in here. You know,
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of cool. That's really good to know because I was like, otherwise, this is not
Yeah,
great, right?
but but the thing about it is, I had to look that up. Not everybody knows that, so maybe it would have been more popular because Eating Raoul came out in 1982, and this movie is 4 years later, and
Uh
so
huh.
maybe they're more recognizable. Uh,
Sure, maybe.
but I think I don't know. It kind of feels like a miss here because it's like just like you said, you're like, why is this happening? You know.
Yeah, yeah.
So then Dr. Simon says the robots do not kill, they simply patrol the top three levels and detain the intruder until the computer on the top of the building can call the police. He goes on to explain that the robot has sleep darts that can knock a man out in 30 seconds. But also the mall now has steel doors from midnight until dawn. They patrol the halls, not the stores themselves, and they have laser eyes to cut through debris. So there's no way this can come back to haunt us at all. Like
Exactly. No way at all.
this like these are like military grade robots in a mall. Like
Yes.
why is that a thing? Why did anybody thought that that was okay?
I mean, because if like mall security is that serious, you know what I mean? Like you may as well just like call in SWAT or something, right? I mean, this is just to secure the mall. That was a
Yeah.
lot. That was kind of overkill.
I mean, it feels like the militarization of the police, like
Uh-huh.
they
Oh,
have way
definitely.
too many too much weapons. They don't need it. And then when they do use it, they it's overkill, right? That's exactly what
Yeah.
these robots are doing in
Right.
this mall, right? So he also says that anyone working after hours simply needs to produce their badge for the robots to scan. Then we see an operator in the control room turns on one of the robots, and the robot comes online and asks the doctor for his identification badge, which he produces and it scans it. So the sound it makes as it comes online and it moves are great. And this was 1 year before RoboCop came out.
Ah, okay.
So like
Yeah.
this is in the 80s we were in love with ninjas, we were in
Yes.
love with robots, and we were in love with like neon and
Yes.
tease hair, all that sort of stuff. Um, so the doctor promises the protectors will make Park Plaza Mall the safest mall in the state. He says, "Trust me, absolutely nothing can go wrong." So of course we know absolutely everything
Yes.
will actually go
Everything.
wrong. So then the robot looks at the screen and the title Chopping Mall comes up. And it's a great intro. I love this intro. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. You
Yes.
know.
Yeah, although I do think I guess seeing it in hindsight, like way after it was done, I just chopping mall. I kind of felt like it was a little misleading.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Yeah.
so when it was titled Killbots, or like even the title you suggested, I'm like, I would have took that. I would have felt a lot better about that.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know why people didn't like Killbots. I mean, Killbots is such a better name than Chopping Mall.
Yeah, I don't
Chopping
know.
Mall is more for like, have you ever seen Phantom of the Mall, Eric's Revenge?
Yes, and that's exactly when I was looking at the titles, I thought, oh, chopping mall. That's gonna be chop chop chop, and okay, great, I love it. In a mall, beautiful. And then I watched it, and I was like, that wasn't at all. And then I saw because chopping mall was actually trending on Twitter the other day, and so
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
it was. And so Barbara Crampton kind of popped in, and she's like, oh well, we didn't get chopped, we got lasered. And then I realized that that is exactly the quibble that I was having with the title. Was like, yeah, because there was nobody was chopped. Nothing is being chopped.
Yeah, I agree. Killbots is definitely the better name for it. I don't know
Yeah.
why the public didn't like it. I think there was like a connection to Transformers, and they thought maybe it might be a
Mm.
child's like cartoon sort of thing. But so we end up with Chopping Mall, which itself is a great name,
Yes.
not for this movie though.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. So then we get shots of the mall with people in it, and we hear that synth theme over, and I love it. We see teenagers making out, and then an older woman gives her husband like a peck on the cheek, which I thought was cute. It was a
That
nice
was
touch
really
to see.
cute.
Yeah. But this is kind of like my childhood here in the mall. Like we see the food court, we see the arcade, we see a kid like skating through the mall. Like for me, it was not skateboards, but inline skates all around the
Uh-huh.
mall. That's all it was.
Yep.
Bunch of women in bikinis. I guess they were having a beauty contest of some sort there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we end in an Italian restaurant. as a large man in a chef's hat and a stained shirt barks orders at the waitress Allison. This dude kind of reminded me of Captain Lou Albino a little bit. Um, from do you remember Cyndi Lauper's movie? Her
Oh,
song "Girls Just Want to Have
yes.
Fun."
Yes, 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 yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
Captain Lou Albino. But like this guy's shirt in the movie was completely like just dirty, like stained, armpit stains.
Yeah.
You kind of know that the food's gonna be fire, but
Right.
right? But like also, I don't know if I would eat there. But if you do eat there, it's gonna be fine. You might find some hair in your food.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. But the food, but it was gonna taste really good though.
Oh hell yeah,
All that on the shirt, that was a lot of flavor. That was a lot of
yeah.
flavor.
He like after he makes like his own sauce, he like just wrings out his shirt into it just to sweat. Yeah. So so then we meet Allison, and Allison's friend is trying to convince her to go to a party after work. So this is the night of the turnover to the robots, and there's a thunderstorm, and a thunderstrike hits the robots' computers on the roof, and it shorts them. And what I love about this movie, it doesn't it knows what it is. It doesn't give you a
Mm-hmm.
lot of backstory. The robots
Mm-hmm.
just work. The thunder strike just takes out all the controls, and now they're killer robots, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. That's all
That's
you need
all
to know.
you.
That's it.
That's all you need, right?
Well, I'm not sure either that at that time there was a lot of I mean, of course, technological advance. This has been happening like throughout time, but I think that there wasn't a lot that was actually known about it in a way that could be explained to lay people. Like I know even I now, when we talk about computers, like we're talking about the equipment on them, I'm just like, hey, you're talking another language. It's I don't need all that. It's okay. It's okay. Just press the button, click the button. Okay, I can click the button. So I think that really worked because even if they had tried this long drawn out explanation, how many of us are really going to understand it?
Right. Or it would have been convoluted, and we were like, not necessary. Just get to the point, right?
Yeah,
And this movie comes in at like 86 minutes or something like that, some
yeah,
ridiculous short number. And so they knew what they knew the type of movie they were. They knew that the audience wouldn't be calling for it. And
right,
so, yeah, so they just didn't provide it, which is fine by me. Some
yeah,
movies I require stuff. This movie, no.
yeah. Not this one.
This movie's really charming in what it does. So
It
I
really
didn't require it.
is, right?
Yeah. So so the operator in the robot control room comes to life when the transformer finally blows and sends alarms going off. He manages to quiet all the alarms, but he's not quite sure it fixed that. I don't know what kind of professional just like smashes button until the alarms goes off and then doesn't do any follow up. It felt like Homer
Yeah.
at his nuclear control panel in The Simpsons and just like
No,
smashing things.
the kind in a horror movie because I love when I see these comments and people are like, well, I mean, horror movies aren't built on sound decisions, right? So I mean, I totally dig that. It's like, now
Yeah,
if nobody did anything crazy, we wouldn't have a movie. So
that's true.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
negligent.
He then grabs a porn magazine and starts leering at it as one of the robots comes online and kills him by striking him in the neck with one of its grabbers, slicing his throat open. I
Hmm.
thought it was a great, it was a cool kill, but like, why does the robot have, I guess, to cut down debris? Who knows? I'm going
Well,
to
I mean,
stop.
yeah, and that's I mean, and so I have to when I'm watching movies that are older, I have to always remember that this is like the 2022 me that's watching this in hindsight, and so I do try to go back, to that time, and I'm like, well, I don't know, but I still don't understand. I'm with you. Why would because they're not supposed to kill anyway, and
Right.
so how was it never thought that they could use these things to kill? I don't know why nobody ever thought that. Right? It's like,
I guess the engineers were like, listen, they already got lasers. What the hell is some scissors at the end of their hands going to do,
right? I guess. I guess.
So then we meet the boys. We meet Ferdy, who's the dork whose uncle owns the furniture store that they all work in. Greg, the leader of the Numbskulls, and Mike, who's never met chewing gum he didn't like. This guy gives a cow a run for her money when it comes to chewing cud. Like every scene, just like he's you, but it works for him. It's so funny. Like it's like
Right,
I don't know, man.
right.
I love it. I love his character. So they're talking over the plans for the party at the store after hours, and Ferdy is hesitant, but the guys talk him into it by saying they're bringing a girl for him. Greg asks Mike if he brought the beer, and Mike has a great delivery. He's like doing his best, like frat brother Tom Cruise impression. He goes, "Greg, come on, dude."
Right, right,
He's
right,
like, Mike is a character to say the least. Like he's my favorite character. You know. So at another location, there's a married couple, Rick and Linda, and they're trying to start their car. And I just noticed on the third watch that on the side of their car it says R&L Automotive,
right.
and so that's their company car, I guess. And they
Right.
talk about later in the movie owning a business. So like I just put the two and two together. I like
Mm-hmm.
seeing those small things, right?
Yes.
But Rick is unable to get it started, so Linda steps out and gets it on the first try. And I'm not sure why the guy seems to be sad that she was able to fix it, but he was. And then Rick says he doesn't want to go to the party, but but she throws some lingerie at him and says she guesses she won't be needing this, and then he peels off. Right. I
Yeah.
like I like their interaction. Like I like their
Yes,
relationship.
yes, I love that. And I thought that, I mean, for something that was done mid '80s, I thought that was pretty progressive. I mean, again, because I mean, like I'm middle aged. We don't always see that in movies where it's okay for the woman to know things like that. Like she
Yeah,
just kind of goes, and he's like the first try, and like of course his ego's bruised, right? But he's like, but that's my woman. That's what she does.
yeah, exactly. I love their character, and I first time seeing this in a long time because I saw it a long time ago. Then I saw it within the last couple of years at a Terror Tuesday here in Austin, Texas, that they do at the Draft House, and I thought that she was going to be the main, our final girl, because she knows things, and so I was kind of
Right,
surprised
right.
that Allison was the one who was our final girl, but she's also a
Yeah,
great final girl, and I can't wait to
sure,
get there.
sure. But yeah, I think
So
that I did think that too. Like I was
right,
like, surely, this is who's going to make it because she's mechanically inclined and okay.
yeah. So then back at the mall, Mike surprises his girlfriend Leslie by going behind her and grabbing her breasts, which he's a charmer, and he says that he can't wait. As they're making out, Leslie's father comes up and asks, "What is it that Mike can't wait for?" And Mike is like
Yeah,
tongue tied by this, and like
right.
he's like chewing his gums, smiling his little shit eating grin. And Leslie saves him by saying they're going to Susie's house for her birthday party. And again, Mike is just smiling. Yep, that's it. Nobody's buying this
Right.
bullshit. Nobody whatsoever. All right. So in the women's locker room, Allison got permission from her father to go to the party. Allison says, "Why do I have the feeling I'm gonna regret this in the morning?" And like she's spot on there, right?
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk about Allison's hair. It's so bad. Like I all the rest of the girls in the movie, like they have pretty decent hair, whatever. But she has that like Midwestern waitress hairstyle that you still kind of see sometimes to this day, where it's like
Yes.
bangs and poofy and long. It's like, oh
Yes. 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 I mean, and we're here in Texas. I mean, so in Texas, big hair is still a thing,
yeah,
especially in certain like circles. So
it's pretty bad.
yeah, that was something else.
That was the most horrifying thing in this movie because this movie isn't actually very scary. You know. So later in the control room, another operator has arrived for his shift, and he's just come from. He says he's just come from an all-you-can-eat pig out, and he notices the operator Marty is not there. He actually stuffs Marty's half-eaten donut in his mouth, which is nasty.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
that was gross.
he sits with his back to the robots, reading a book. We then see the robots come online and look at each other, then turn themselves off. The operator looks behind him because he hears a noise, but he doesn't see anything.
Hmm.
And then he look. It's kind of funny, like they're just doing this looking back, looking forward thing.
Right, right,
I thought it was kind of suspense. It was kind of they did a cool job here. And but just as the robot is about to deploy a deadly weapon, a call comes in. He picks it up, and the caller's asking for Marty. But when he says he's not there, he hangs up. He once again sits down, uneasy that he's being watched, and then he's reading a book called "They Came from Outer Space."
Mm-hmm.
And finally, the robot opens up a port and fires a claw to the back of his head and pulls him back, killing him instantly. So I thought that was a pretty quick, cool kill. I
Yeah.
thought
Oh
maybe
yeah.
it might come through his mouth or something like that. And maybe I think we see I don't know. Do you remember if we actually see the
I,
claw come out of his mouth?
I don't
Okay.
remember. I don't think so. I mean, I was really stuck on how he kind of rubs the back of his neck. That one
Yeah.
time, yeah, because it's kind of like that whole you know you're getting goosebumps. The hairs on the back of your neck are literally standing up,
Yeah.
and you just don't investigate it. You don't think about it, like you don't consider why that is. You know, he just kind of goes, oh well, whatever, right? And
And
that
then
was
like
really crazy.
he could have just turned around and like read his book that way. I don't know. This is, uh,
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
know,
but
but it
this is
was
cool.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
cool. It was a cool kill because
Yeah.
I'm like, but it was foreshadowed. Like I really appreciate that. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, we already knew what was gonna happen.
Right. So we're back at the furniture store. They've closed down to the public, but they're partying inside. The beer is flowing, and the white people are dancing. I guess you would call it.
I see, you know that whole setup was really it was beyond me to understand it. Because you're in a mall, like you're still in the mall. There are
Yeah.
still people like the janitors who would have to come through. So the fact that you are like, you know, partying with alcohol in the store with this is a furniture store. Furniture is expensive. It has always been expensive. You
Yeah.
actually have beer in the furniture store.
Yeah. And like you said, the doors are glass, so anybody can
Yes,
see. But so
you can see.
I wanted to mention one thing that's relevant to this, RJ, and that's I knew somebody who was going to have a bachelor party in the mall store, just like this. After
Shut
the
up. Really?
after the mall closed, they were going to have
Okay.
people come in through the back, and I was going to be one of those people, and we were going to
Right,
like
right.
go to the mall and have this bachelor party in the store. And what they were going to do is they were going to tape over the windows with
Okay.
like craft paper so people couldn't see. But they were starting to prepare the store like right around, let's say the store closed at 9, like at
Uh-huh.
8:50 they started putting the craft paper on the windows, and mall security came up and said, what are you doing? You can't do that. And
Right.
so at the last minute the bachelor party had to be changed to another location. But so people do think in there, and this is the early 2000s, right?
Okay,
so
okay.
so like people do think in their minds of having parties at malls. It's so weird. I'm the same way. Like, I mean, I was gonna go because I was invited, but like, why the
Right.
hell are we having this party at a mall?
Yeah, I don't I mean there's so much. So I used to my first job was doing inventory at stores. And we loved doing the mall stores because they closed at a certain time. They were smaller. That means they had less stuff in it. I mean, unless it was like the CD stores, they had a ton of stuff.
Oh yeah,
But that's a whole other thing. But like we were there after hours. And so my thought is there's more activity in malls at night than you would even imagine. So like there's not just security, there's like the janitor people. There are people who are staying late for inventory, right? And so like I
yeah,
had my first job like in 88, 89. It wasn't that far from that. But like I saw more people moving around in the mall after hours. So when I see this scene, I'm like, that's crazy. And like at one point you're even like mostly naked and like you're really doing this is really what they do in malls. That
yeah.
was kind of far-fetched for me. So it's
Horny
funny that you're
teenagers
saying
though.
this happened in real life and I'm like I didn't know people did that type of thing. Really?
Yeah, they were gonna have like strippers in this mall
In the
store.
mall store?
Yeah, it's crazy.
They
But
weren't worried about the glitter getting on the store merchandise. I mean, really?
I guess they were. I guess they were.
Glitter free strippers. They got to be glitter free.
And the worst part of it, if I'm remembering correctly, is it was a restaurant. So
Oh,
so like
wow.
yeah. Imagine like other restaurants and other malls that didn't get shut down when they were trying to have bachelor parties in their stores,
Yeah, exactly. This is a
So,
whole new thing for me. I'm going to be chewing on this for a long time, Miguel. Thank you for that.
so next time I read your short story about killer robots who kill people in a
Yes,
bachelor store in the mall, yeah, that's
right,
gonna be it.
exactly.
All right. So yeah, so we're talking about their dancing. These white guys, these white people were doing what I think was dancing.
Right.
And then finally, Ferdy and Allison are introduced, and sparks are flying with them.
Yes, that was cute.
It was cute, yeah. Greg and Susie do this kind of high thing, and it reminds me of a scene in the movie. Have you seen the movie called Forgetting Sarah Marshall? It's a comedy,
Yes, 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 yes.
and in it, like he's having sex with a woman, and she says hi to him, and he's like hi while they're having sex. So they do
Yeah,
this high and high thing back and forth, and it kind of like ruins his concentration. And that's
right, right.
exactly what it was so funny to see it in this movie because they were doing that. First, she starts it playfully, and then they get into it. They're like hi and
Yes,
start
yes,
making
yes,
out, which is
yes.
nice.
Yeah, I thought, and it was cute. They were teasing the other couple, but
Yeah,
then they're teasing each other, and it was like, well, that was a really genuine interaction.
yeah, I liked all the couples in here. Like there wasn't one
Mhm.
couple that I thought didn't belong, or
Right.
like most of these characters. I would say all the characters are likable, which is nice to
Yeah.
see. Not it's not necessary all the time, but it's nice to see.
Exactly.
So outside in
Okay,
the mall,
except the dad. The dad was not very likable. He was
mm,
such a stock character, but I mean, he was only there for
yeah,
a hot minute anyway. So yeah.
and that's authority figures down with authority,
Right.
right? So outside in the mall proper, we see the killer robots going online and patrolling their respective floors. Protector One actually passes by the furniture store and turns to look at the partygoers, but then just keeps it moving. We also see a scene of one robot passing a record store called Licorice Pizza. And if that sounds familiar to you, it's because the movie that came out earlier this year called Licorice Pizza was named after this record store in the Sherman Oaks Galleria where this film was shot. The
Mm.
writer of that movie, of course, is Paul Thomas Anderson, and he loved that record store as a kid. So it's kind of like all intermingled here. And are you familiar with the term licorice pizza means?
No, I don't know what it means.
I just found it out today as well. So it's referencing a vinyl record. And so because
Oh.
it's the shape of a pizza round, and also it's kind of licorice
Oh.
colored black, so it's called licorice pizza.
Okay,
So
and it has
so
the
that's
little grooves. I get it. I
yeah.
dig it.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I haven't seen the movie, but I thought
Yeah,
it
well,
was
now
I was like,
now we got to see the movie.
I gotta see it. I just thought it was funny because like, hey, that sounds really familiar. So I had to look it up. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
So in the furniture store, the couples have stopped vertically dancing and are now horizontally dancing.
Mm.
Greg says to Susie, "You smell like pepperoni." And when she gets angry, he follows it up with, "Wait a minute, I like pepperoni." And she takes this as a compliment and starts stripping for him. Okay. I'm gonna
Okay,
use that
you
on my
smell
wife
like
and see how that
sausage.
works.
Yeah, okay.
You smell like pig byproduct. Come over here. Give
Yeah,
me.
it's like I don't know. Them's fighting words, I think. But okay.
So Mike again has his mouth full as he's going down on Leslie. Then we have Ferdy and Allison just sitting on a couch watching old black and white sci-fi movies.
Uh
So this
huh.
must have reminded you of your childhood, right? Sitting on a couch watching
Yeah,
old black and white sci-fi movies.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, minus the orgy, but yeah. It
Right.
was.
Well, minus the orgy. Minus the orgy. So they're kind of hitting it off. Just as they're connecting, in the background, we hear Leslie screaming out, "Oh God, you're the king! You're the king!" Which Ferdy replies, "Chalk one up to the king." So I think
It's a lot.
the comedy kind of, for the most part, hits. There's some one-liners that they were trying to go for that didn't quite connect for me,
Uh
but
huh.
for the most part, the comedy is good in this movie.
Yes. Yeah. Agreed.
Ferdy then tells Allison that it's getting late and the mall is going to seal up in an hour, and he offers to take her home. Leslie says she would rather stay a while longer, and they start making out. As the movie ends on the TV, the scene fades. A pretty funny and kind of nasty transition here of a shot of a mop being run out. And then we see Dick Miller playing Walter Paisley as the janitor. And then two fellow janitors come up and just start talking shit to him. It
Yeah.
was the weirdest thing. Like, I don't know. It was just funny. They just start talking
Yeah.
shit to him, busting his
I wanted
balls.
that story. Yeah, I wanted that story. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, like the inner workings of the janitorial staff at a mall. Like, what's
Well, and
going?
that's exactly it, right? Like there's always these little cliques in like every workplace. And so I remember thinking, I was like, hey, I wonder what happened. Like something happened in the break room, and these guys are just really, really hot about it or something. Like I
Yeah,
wanted that story. That's one of those little things that happens, and then I'm thinking about it, and the next thing you know, it's a whole full blown story, right?
that's cool. I love to see the workings on in your head of how you come about a story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was intriguing to me. I actually like put that a note in my phone to kind of go, what's up with that?
Oh, that's cool. I like that. So they're busting his balls. They're asking him if he's having a good time trying to clean up a nasty spill. He says, "Yuck it up. I'll be out of here in 10 minutes," and that he won't get locked up again. So apparently, maybe he got locked in before, but this is the first night. Maybe they were testing it out earlier and he got locked in. I don't know, but they're busting his balls about it.
Hmm.
As the bully janitors walk off, one of the killbots walks up and or drives up, I should say, and bumps
Hmm.
into the bucket, knocking it all over Walter's feet. The killbot asks to see Walter's ID. When he doesn't suddenly produce it, the bot says, "Do not make any sudden moves," then fires a dart at him, seemingly missing. Walter, confused, asks, "What the hell was that?" Then he produces his badge, but when that doesn't work, he goes to strike the bot with his mop. Then the bot sends an electrical charge through the dart, which has landed in the spilled puddle of mop water, electrifying Walter. We hear as Walter screams, then falls to the floor dead. Then the killbot says, "Thank you. Have a nice day," as the music kicks up here. The first of many times we'll be hearing that phrase throughout this
Yes,
movie.
yes. Oh, that's what you hear when you walk through the mall, right? Like all this, the salespeople, they're all like fakely cheery, and so there's always this "Have a nice day, have a nice day, have a nice day," kind of the Stepford Wives kind of thing.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that. So then, in the furniture store, post coitus, Leslie demands Mike get her a pack of Virgin Lights from the vending machine in the mall, enticing him by flashing him. So, of course, it wouldn't be an 80s movie if there's not gratuitous, nudity,
Right,
women's nudity, right?
right.
But not so much male nudity here. We do get like bare chested, I think is about it.
Yes.
But so she entices him by flashing him. He grabs his badge and walks down to the vending machines, exclaiming when he sees the price of cigarettes were $1.25. I was like, okay, dude, I think I
Right.
think they're like over $10 now.
I think so. Yeah, I think he would die now. Yeah.
So the killbot is actually like playing with Mike, like which is weird. Like he's moving up towards him and falling back, and because Mike senses something being there, so he's kind of doing the same thing that the security guard was doing. He's
Uh
looking behind
huh.
his back, and um, so I was going to say here that the robots are following slasher logic now, which is
Yes.
great. It feels like almost a Michael Myers, a robotic version
Hmm.
of Michael Myers.
Yes. Sure.
And so Mike is the actor is great at object work. He's just chewing a wad of gum in his mouth. He's like reaching for quarters, looking behind him as he senses something. Mike calls out to Leslie, but she isn't there. Then again, the payphone rings, startling him. And it's somebody named Jamal asking if there are any messages for him. Very weird. Again, I wonder if this is some sort of in joke from some other movie that we don't know
Yeah,
about.
I don't know. Yeah, but I remember looking at that scene, and I thought, that used to be a whole thing. Like it's easy to forget that there used to be payphones. I want to say that I went to London a few years ago, and I want to say that maybe we actually saw one. And my husband and I both were like, "Oh, right, those used to be." I mean, I always thought they were just so gross. Back in the day, like I would never use them, and I would just tell Mama, "I'm gonna be home. I don't have to call you because I'll be home on time. I don't want to touch that." And
Yeah,
so, but there were people that use them like their personal phones. Because I mean, again, because I grew up in the hood. That's hood. That was hood stuff. That was hood stuff
yeah.
right there. It's like, hey, do I have any messages on this public payphone here?
I would imagine that payphones are to like the younger generation. No, Generation Z. Zers, right? Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Payphones are to Generation Z what like a payphone booths were to me, because I heard of them and I seen them in the movies, but I never
Mm-hmm.
actually saw them, because by the time I was old enough to remember anything, they had been replaced, well, fully replaced by by payphones now, or payphones, I
Right.
should say. But yeah, because like now I'm on TikTok all the time, and there's these videos of these parents who grew up in the '80s showing their kids stuff like technology from the '80s and '90s,
Uh-huh.
and their kids can't figure it out. They're like, "What the hell do you do
Yeah.
with it?"
What
Like
are you doing with this?
a rotary phone, like they can't figure that out. That sort of stuff. So I'm feeling older by the minute.
Yes, yes. Oh, yeah. Well, imagine like seeing the hairstyles and the clothes and going, yeah, because yeah, I didn't wear this stuff, but I mean, I knew people that did, right?
Right. You're just like, yeah, because I think about it like, let's say 2005. 2005 seems like yesterday. But
Hmm.
like if you look back at the hairstyles and the clothing, I'm like, oof, what was going on there? So it's
Yes,
like,
yes,
we all grow
yes.
old.
Yeah, because what did it for me was in the very beginning, the waitresses that and they had the little Izod shirts on. And I was like,
Ah,
ew, Izod, that was the brand. We inner city kids didn't wear Izod, but we knew what it was. And I was like,
yeah,
that really put me in time and place. And I realized that this was not the inner city. I just knew that part.
yeah. This is a more affluent area of the city
Yes,
for sure. Yeah.
absolutely.
So for me, I'm thinking, why is it taking Mike forever to get this fucking pack of cigarettes? He just starts fixing his hair in the reflection of the cigarette vending machine, and I feel like he's like riding high, like having just had sex. He's thinking
Yeah.
nothing can stop him, right?
Yeah, yeah, his brain's not there yet. The
Exactly.
blood hasn't come back to his head yet.
So then suddenly we see the Killbot who asks Mike for his ID badge. Surprised, he produces the badge and says Klatu Barada Niktu, which apparently these are the famous words from the 1951 movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, which
Mm,
I still haven't seen. So,
hmm.
but it's also the words from um, Army of Darkness. Or have you?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like.
yeah. That's where I remember it from. I'm like, oh, they're using these things again. That's lovely. I love it.
So the killbot doesn't register the badge and advances on Mike, who is trapped in a corner. The bot fires a sleep dart at Mike, who falls to the floor, passing out. As he does, the bot extends one of its hands to Mike's throat, slicing it again. So
Hmm.
another kill. That kind of kill is kind of underwhelming, but because we already
Hmm.
saw it once, but there's a lot of people that have to go through, so it's
Right,
a
right.
slasher film, so they're going through them very quickly. So Susie goes out into the mall, calling out for Mike. We get a very gratuitous shot of her butt in her Playboy underwear as she's
Yes,
walking to the cigarette vending machine
in the mall.
in the mall. Yeah, what like
Right.
you said, with other like security guards or
Right.
uh, the janitorial staff still there.
Yes, yes.
But
That was weird. That was so weird to me. But like you say, it's the '80s, and it's not an '80s movie if there's not a naked woman or five. So yeah.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So she walks up to the vending machine and she calls out for Mike, but I don't know how, but she doesn't see him slumped behind the machine in the shadows.
Hmm.
She walks forward and kind of almost trips over his feet. She thinks he's asleep and starts shaking him to wake him up. And she pulls him into the light, and we then see that his throat has indeed been slashed as the blood pours out of it.
Hmm.
Um, not the best, like you can the makeup here, the special effects weren't the
Yeah.
best here. Like you could
Yeah.
see
No.
the yeah.
Yeah, it was. Well, and I thought too that that might have been why the kill, like you were saying, was underwhelming. Because if they had put a lot of focus on it, then it would have been obvious to her that he had been killed, right? So I think that was almost like a, I don't want to say like an okey doke pulled on the audience, where you kind of think, ah, well, maybe he made it. Oh no, he didn't. He's really dead. I don't
Yeah,
know.
which actually happens later on as well, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So then Susie yells. Just then the bot bursts open the double doors, which how it does, we don't know, as they they swing in, not out. So it's not, I don't know. It just it seemed like they were going more for a big entrance rather than,
Right, right, right.
how did they actually
I'm
do it.
sure.
But regardless, the music kicks up and Susie runs away towards the furniture store, and the Killbots starts firing lasers at her, which I fucking love. I love the lasers so much. Kid of the '80s, like this is like a
Yes.
it's like a '80s action cartoon,
Right.
And then she approaches the store as the other party goers go to the door because of her yells, and she stops in front of them, and then the robot fires one final blast, connecting with her head and exploding it instantly. Blood and gore splashing everywhere, even onto the
Yes.
furniture store glass doors. Amazing
Yes.
scene. What did you think?
It really was. Like I was like, oh, this is why the movie gets a lot of accolades. It's a one shot right here.
Yeah, yeah, and I thought
It
it
was
was so
amazing.
so well done. I can see now why, like, if the majority of your special effects budget, practical effects budget goes to this shot, and then that's why you don't spend as much money on the other like throat slicing shots.
Exactly.
Worth it,
Exactly.
Yeah. So then the killbot goes to look over its work, and then again says, "Thank you. Have a nice day." The bot is joined by another bot as they shoot out the glass doors, and the crew runs to the storage room. The robots start fucking shit up in there, firing their lasers, blowing up the furniture, the walls, everything.
Mm-hmm.
The crew managed to make it to the storage room and start barricading the doors. While trying to formulate a plan, they hear the mall's steel doors shutting them in for the night. So it's midnight, and they have to survive until 6 a.m.
Yep.
Ferdy finds that the phone is dead, and so the only exit they can find is through the air ducts. They say if they take them down to the parking levels, they can escape. The three women are hoisted into the vents. Outside, the killbots are using plastique to blow the door down. Again, why do these robots, these mall robots, have plastique? Like in order to, like,
Yes.
why is that equipped? You know?
It was so much. Like it just, you know, I wondered if rather than believe that this stuff was just pulled out in the moment, you know how like when you're kids and you're playing superheroes and you got to declare what your powers are, and you always got
Mhm.
that one kid that's always like, oh no, I got this extra power. It's like an episode of South Park where this happened, right? And it's like, oh no, I got this extra part, this power that I can do. It almost felt like that. Like uh, all of a sudden they have this power too, and you're like, but why would you have that? Why would that even be a thing? That's not even something that was addressed, and I don't know how to feel about it.
Yeah, that's
where,
perfect.
where did you pull that from?
That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing. That's exactly probably what it is. They're like, okay, the craziest thing we can equip, we're gonna do it. It's
Yeah,
kind of
let's
like
do it.
how Batman has an answer for everything in his utility belt. It's kind of
Yeah,
like these guys, right?
exactly. Dora's backpack. I mean, it's all the same thing.
Yeah. So then the bot blows down the door before the men can make it into the ducts, so they have to escape another way. As the women are crawling through the ducts, Linda, Susie, and Allison notice that the heat has been turned on as it's getting hotter and hotter in the vents, and it's getting harder for them to crawl through the metal, crawl on the metal. Susie is losing it, saying she has to get out of there. So back with Rick, Greg, and Ferdy, they decide to hit up Peckinpah Sporting Goods Store, which is referencing director Sam Peckinpah, who is known for his violent, gun-heavy westerns and other movies like Straw Dogs,
Oh, that's cool.
Stray Dogs. So to get some weapons to defend themselves. So they break down the glass door and load up. Propane tanks, shotguns, revolvers, ARs, and ammo for all of them. They say, "Let's go send those fuckers a Rambogram." Again,
Yes.
this is one of those terrible lines that,
Yeah,
like,
it
I
was
don't
so
think that
cheesy.
hit the way you wanted it to hit.
Yeah, I know. It was like you wish you could be Rambo. Like you are in the middle of the burbs. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Do you even know how to shoot that thing? Do you even know how to handle it? Do you even know what to do with it? Really?
right. And what, like, they get a shotgun and an A&R, which is great. But then Ferdy
Yes.
picks up a pistol, right, or a revolver, I should say, and it's a
Yeah.
heavy. It's like a Magnum, but still, you only get 6 bullets, right? So why not
Right.
just get, like, there was multiple ARs, there was multiple shotguns. What are you doing, Ferdy? But
Right.
but
Yeah.
but I guess that's our Ferdy, right?
Right.
So then we see them they trying to walk in sync down the main hallway, but that doesn't work out.
Mhm.
Rick lets go a few rounds to get the Killbot's attention, which they get very shortly. As one of the Killbot approaches, they fire everything they have, and so does the Killbot.
Mhm.
Ferdy throws a propane tank at it, which rolls to its tank treads, which Rick then shoots at, which causes it to explode in a huge cloud of dust. As the smoke clears, they see that the Killbot is on its side, and they presume it to be dead or out of order.
Right. Yeah.
Whatever.
Exactly. Right.
Right, but we don't know. But we'll see whether or not that's
We'll
true later
see.
on. So back in the Ducks, Susie is yelling that she needs to get back to Greg because he needs her. She kicks out one of the grates and falls down into a hardware store. They decide to go, and then so the rest of the girls go down into the hardware store as well, and they decide to go looking for the guys, but they also load up with weapons from the store as well. Back in the mall area, Killbot number two is patrolling, but then decides to hide in a hallway as it turns off its lights to wait for its unsuspecting victims. And I'm thinking, who programmed these robots to do this?
See, okay, and this is what I've been waiting to get to. I feel like there was so much that might also not have been understood about I don't know, AI and robotic technology and things like that, because now I remember when the reboot of the Child's Play movie, like how
Uh-huh.
they actually addressed that in the beginning, that this doll was actually programmed with certain artificial feelings and thoughts and ideas. Because in this movie Killbots, I'm wondering, why is your default just mass chaos and destruction? Like, why would the default be that? And why would you have all this different stuff? How would you know to hide from the people? How would you know to do that? Like, where did
Yeah,
that come from? Did you just develop it on your own? And if you did, how did that happen? You still have to have the capabilities in there somewheres, right? So why would
right.
that be? Why would
Yeah,
that
yeah.
be?
Movie logic, right?
Yeah, exactly. Movie logic, and we needed a lot of it for some of these things.
But it actually reminds me of another movie that came out in the mid '80s, Short Circuit, which was had a kind of a similar premise, but the reverse of that, in
Hmm.
which it was a government. Um, this was a government like war machine uh,
Mm.
that was struck by lightning and turned into a very nice robot. Johnny Number Five, right?
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Or Johnny Five, I should say. And then in this movie, they're supposed to be good robots that are struck by the lightning, and then that turns them bad. So it's kind of like similar premises but reversed.
Yeah, but reverse. Yeah, I mean, and I think that that sort of works on a certain level. Except that, I mean, especially if we're making the correlations between man versus science, anyway. I
Mhm.
mean, like, it kind of works. So
Yeah,
yes, this is our enemy. Our enemy is progress.
exactly. It's like the hubris of man to
Yes,
make a machine that will eventually kill it. Kill the
exactly. That's
humanity.
exactly.
Which is scary because have you seen those videos from like Boston Dynamics of the robots that look like this, like basically robotic dogs that can act like this? Have you seen those videos?
Yes, I have seen those videos. They are so fascinating but frightening.
Terrifying because you know that they're going to be used on the minority population in the United States.
Always, always.
So it's going to
Yeah,
be us that are feeling the brunt of it. They say, "Oh, it's for
exactly.
protection," and "Oh, it's really to make everything safer." No, that's not.
No,
That's not
no,
what's
it's
going to
not.
happen.
It's not. It's
Yeah,
terrifying, though, just the thought of it. I mean, because, of course, when I'm seeing this stuff, I'm looking at the imagery of real dogs, right, being used as weapons, like, the whole fire hoses during the civil rights movement.
exactly.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, you couldn't control those. Or, well, you could, you did. They
Mhm.
did exactly what they were trained to do. And so I feel I'm agreeing with you that this is going to be a thing.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
that's
it's
what they're going to be programmed to do.
that's what I love about horror movies is not so much it's not always the movie itself that's scary. It's like if you extrapolate that thought, that
Right,
idea and bring it into real
right.
life. And that's what we do with this movie that's over 30 years old.
Yes.
And it's like fuck, you know, terrifying
Right,
for our
right,
future, right?
right. And you just think about all the ways that that could go wrong.
And will,
Because
could
yeah,
and will, yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, the things that did happen, and even if they were going to use them, like, because then I think about things like people of color and this technology on the cell phones that uses facial recognition, right? So you're talking about these ID cards. How do you know that they would recognize this as valid if the picture on it was a black person, where it doesn't,
Mm,
you can't recognize it as human? I know it had that barcode, but like there's no level of interpretation there. It's like I could see that going wrong too.
right, yeah, yeah. Like, have you seen any episodes of like Black Mirror?
Yes.
Yeah, like Black Mirror
Yeah.
is some of the most terrifying things because they actually had an episode of those like kind of robotic dogs in one of those seasons. I forget which one, and it was terrifying. So
Yes.
it's technology that is going to be killing us. You know.
Exactly. And then yes, and then the idea that it's going to uh uh supersede us or
Mm.
surpass us, like yeah, that I think that's a real fear.
Well, where humanity is like lulled into a false sense of security because they offer up to us technology and say it's going to make our lives easier, right?
Mhm.
So when you're talking about like cell phones, specifically like geo tracking and like having the chips in there, like oh you'll be able to get to wherever you want to get and you'll never get lost. Like that's so convenient, right? But also we'll know
Right.
where you are every second of every single day. You
Every
know.
second of every day. Always.
Yeah. So that's the terrifying part. That's
That is
whatever
terrifying,
what I'm
right?
drawing from the movie is that, that's terrifying.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
all right, so the guys have managed to get more propane tanks and are setting up a trap at the elevators. The girls are using gas tanks to make Molotov cocktails. But the question I'm asking myself is why the fuck are they selling gas in a store? Like it's just like on shelves. Like I don't. Maybe I was going to
Yeah.
ask you because you said that you grew up in this era. I was born in '82, so I was like I wasn't
Hmm,
really
hmm.
hitting the malls at that age. But um, was this a thing?
I don't remember seeing that.
Okay.
I don't even remember, and we're in Texas. I don't even remember seeing like the gun shops. Although I do realize that if there was like an academy attached to the mall, that there would be guns. But like
Yeah.
the independent sort of gun shop thing in the mall, I don't remember seeing that. Maybe it's a regional thing, but of course, again, I would think if anybody's going to have guns and gas inside the mall, it would be here in
It was,
Texas, and I
yeah.
never saw that.
And me neither. I was like, okay, but this is very convenient, but also it's gonna lead to some explosions, so I'm down for it.
Well,
I'm down for it.
exactly, and that's exactly the thought. Like, can you imagine the liability for that? Like, how much
Yeah,
insurance
is
did you have to pay on your storefront and for your inventory because you have gas on the shelves and firearms are also. Yeah,
oh
I don't know. So
yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
like the stupidest
Maybe it's a
combination.
regional thing. I would have thought it would have been a thing
Well,
in Texas if it was really a thing, but I've
and they're
never
in
seen it.
California, so yeah, I don't know. I don't know,
Yeah, I
but
don't know. So
I thought it was funny.
yeah, that's kind of that's weird.
And then Allison grabs some road flares as well, which will it's kind of foreshadowing and it come back in the future. So back with the downed Killbot, we see it wasn't actually dead, and it
Of course
manages to get itself back up by using its robotic arms. And then it says Protector One back online. So Ferdy has managed to get the elevator doors to open and close, while Rick and Greg are working with the propane tanks on the top of the elevator. So Killbot number two, has found the girls and is following them. They stop and start lighting up the Molotov cocktails and then throwing them at the bot. Um, this one has blue laser beams, which is my favorite. I like the blue laser beams one. And the one hits Susie in the calf, and that actually looks pretty nasty. Like you see the blood come out and everything. So that was kind of a
yeah,
great
yeah.
effect that I like there. And while she's down, the killbot purposely shoots at the gas can that she was holding, blowing it up and setting Susie on fire. This is a gruesome scene as she tries to get
It
up,
is.
her whole body on fire as the bot slowly follows her. This one was bad. This is a messed up death, I should say.
Yeah. Oh, it was, and I think that it helped, but it did help to instill kind of that sense of helplessness in the other girls as they're watching this happen. There's nothing they can do. It's kind of like when hairspray gets on. I mean, his hair is already flammable, but once all the hairspray that we were in the '80s, it's
Yeah,
like boom, it's not anything you could do. Although I did really want to know, how did the robot know to do that?
exactly,
Like, how did you know there
exactly.
was flammable liquid in there? Like, and that if you hit that was gonna, like, I was a little confused. That I was like, okay, maybe I'm doing too much.
Because it's not an errant like zap, right? It
Right.
specifically turns its head and aims at it. So
Exactly. That's exactly it. Which would mean that it had to know, but how did you know?
yeah.
Because then, of course, by this point in the movie, I'm already thinking conspiracy theories. I'm already thinking that the whole security company, it was like a setup anyway, and then they want to just test this technology. You just want to test this on doing something crazy. Then
I like
inevitably, what happened was gonna happen because they planned it that way. And then I'm like, okay, now I know you're doing too much, Rhonda.
then you pause the movie and go write a short story and come back to
Yeah,
it.
exactly. You're doing too much.
So just at that moment, the boys run up and see the horrible scene, and Greg actually has to watch his girlfriend die,
Mm-hmm.
being burned alive. And he lets off with a shotgun, shooting at the robot, and the rest of the guys follow suit. But nothing stops it, so they end up having to run away. They lead it to the elevator as Rick jumps in, then goes up through the emergency exit, and then the robot follows, then gets stuck in as the doors close. Rick jumps off the top of the elevator, and then the other guys try shooting the propane tank that is affixed at the top of the elevator, but everyone keeps missing until Allison, frustrated, grabs the gun out of Ferdy's hands and hits it on the first try, blowing up the elevator, which causes it to fall to the ground and blows up.
Mm-hmm.
I love how they're setting up Allison here as a final
Yeah.
girl. She's just a badass final girl. I love it.
Yeah, well, yes, and I'm glad that they built her into that because she has this baby face, which all of them are young, but I mean, she kind of has the look of softness, but you actually
Yeah,
see her strength. It's like, oh no, don't get it
yeah.
twisted. I look like a baby. I'm not a baby.
Um, Later, they're holed up in the Italian restaurant that we saw earlier, and Rick and Linda commiserate on how much they're going to end up owing the mall if they survive. Rick then congratulates Allison on her on her slick shooting. Greg asks them why they left the vents. They tell him that she wanted to help him, but he insists that they should have stayed there, and he's kind of bereft. And Greg wants to go off by himself, but Rick tells him that they need to stick together. So then Freddy comes up with a plan to go to the third floor and shut down the computer, which would then shut off the killbots, which they agree to. But as they're making a run for the third floor, Greg is kind of out in front of the pack and he's wilding, like he's going reckless. He's not looking out for the killbots. And then as he gets to the top of the escalator, he's attacked by one of the killbots and thrown over the railing to his death. Again, we hear, "Thank you, have a nice day."
Yes, yes,
And then there were four survivors left, right?
yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention here was that the director actually uh, did this scene as a stuntman, not filmed it, but as they were
Mm-hmm.
setting up for it and training for it, he got set up for this scene, and but he did it from the second floor. They did
Mm-hmm.
in the movie; it's from the third floor, and he landed perfectly, but then he later found out that he broke a rib when he did that.
Oh,
But he didn't tell anybody throughout the rest of the remaining of the shooting, which was a couple more
oh
weeks, because he didn't want anybody to be like, "Oh shit, maybe we shouldn't do
no!
this
Right. That I'm not gonna
thing."
do it. Right. Oh
Yeah,
no!
exactly.
Ah, that's terrible.
Imagine, I'm sure the union wasn't happy when they heard that, right?
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
So then they run off as the killbots are after them. Both Protector 1 and Protector 3 have gone to level 2 to detain the intruders. So at this point, there were three. Now there's only a total of two killbots left. So then they managed to shoot the locks on a steel door and get into a department store. but not before Allison gets shot in the arm. The Killbots talk, and one goes to level 3 to get in while the other stays to cut its way through the gate. Again,
Hmm.
now they're
Yeah.
communicating with each other in English so that we can understand.
Right, right.
Yeah. Um, so the crew goes up to level 3 within the department store and they talk about whether they should try to get out or not. Linda loses it a bit on Ferdy and then apologizes, saying, I guess I'm not used to being chased in a mall in the middle of the night by killer robots. And I'm thinking, same girl, same. Like, what a what a premise. I'm loving it. So that was a good that was a fun line. Like the
It
other line,
was.
let's go Rambo on his ass. Like that was lame. But this is a fun line,
Yeah, yeah, no, it's the correlation, like that just didn't make sense. What she said made total sense because I mean, again, they're in the burbs. This is not a thing that you would think is going to ever happen, but
Yeah.
especially not here. Nothing bad ever happens in these neighborhoods, right?
Right. So they decide to wait for a bit since they're safe now. Later, the bots have managed to cut through the gate with their laser beams. And in order to confuse the bots, the crew decides to put up a bunch of mannequins. And Killbot number 3 has green lasers and starts firing at the
Mhm.
mannequins. Ferdy then reveals the mirrors that they set up behind them, which causes the laser beams to bounce off and back at the Killbot, electrifying it, causing it to spin out of control, firing everywhere. One of
Mhm.
these errant beams strikes Linda in the gut, killing her. Rick sees this and loses his shit and tries to drive a cart into the bot, which electrocutes him and blows up the robot. Ferdy says that
Yeah.
him and Allison still need to find the computer. This is kind of sad, right? He saw his wife die, and then he like
Yeah.
basically doesn't want to live anymore, and just says, "I'm going to take you out with me," sort of thing.
Right, right. Well, and that's believable. Like, and especially in a moment of grief like that, that's
Mm,
totally believable. Like, I dug it for that reason, but it was really sad. And of course, when they started lining up the mannequins, of course, my brain is saying though, how is that gonna fool them? Like, how are they chasing you all? How do they know where you are? So I'm thinking maybe they have heat sensing, capabilities, right? I'm like,
yeah,
this is how they know where you are, even when you're being quiet and you're hiding. How do they know that you're there? But then they put up these mannequins, and I'm like, they don't have any heat. So why are you? How is that gonna work, right? And I'm
yeah.
like, maybe I'm giving too much credit from the beginning.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
Yeah, it's
And
like the mannequins are fooling you, really?
we also see it later on where she's hiding on a shelf and she's like, I don't know, let's say 5'3" or something,
Yeah,
but she's using like a 2 foot bag of dog food to hide herself. So if
yeah.
it's heat sensors, it's not working, right?
Well, exactly. And I really was wondering, how do they know where you are?
Yeah.
Like, eh, how do they know where you are? How are they
Yeah.
finding you? If you're being quiet, theoretically, you should be able to just hide out until the next morning, right? Unless they're just
Yeah.
gonna tear up everything, which could have been a plan, but still, you only got so many hours, right?
Exactly. They only had to survive for a couple more hours.
Yeah, yeah.
So back with Killbot number 1, it's still searching for the remaining couple. Allison and Ferdy split up to try to find the computer faster. In a corridor, she's surprised by, I don't know, it looks like a fake spider or a real spider
Hmm.
or something that falls from the ceiling. I don't know, very weird. I don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think it was like a bundle of wires or something,
a bundle of wires,
like that
okay.
came out of the ceiling. Yeah, as they were all bundled together like that.
And then she also hears something behind the door and goes to smash it good, only to find a bunch of junk fall out. And to me, and she gets scared by that. So I feel like these are just like 2 jump scares that they do back to back that
Sure. Well,
weren't
yeah,
necessary.
they weren't necessary. Now, I did wonder though if maybe it wasn't sort of an allusion to these are just piles of junk at the end of the day. Like at the
Hmm.
end of the day, they are just as harmless as this bundle of wires that fell. They're just as harmless as this little junk closet. As a matter of fact, like how a lot of the metal stuff was in the closet and kind of
Hmm.
going clank clank when she opened the door. And I was
Yeah.
like, huh, are you trying to say that all they are is just this bundle of, like, I don't know. I put that to the side. I said, maybe, maybe.
Yeah. So she walks into the room slowly, looking for something, when suddenly we hear the whirring of a bot hand as it very nicely taps her on the shoulders to be like, I'm actually here. which I don't know why it didn't just shoot her with a laser beam. It wanted her to see what was
Right.
happening, you know?
Again, this is a consciousness.
Yeah, it
Like
has.
all of this is you have to have a conscience to do this stuff,
It is
really.
definitely sentient, which is weird.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So she screams out for Ferdy, who comes running. In the meantime, the bot slowly advances on her with its four arms up in the air, pinchers, pinching. Ferdy bursts in and point blank shoots the bot in the laser eye, which finally breaks it as it yells, laser malfunction, and chases Ferdy. Ferdy continues to shoot at the bot until he runs out of bullets. Then he throws the gun at him and finally a fire extinguisher, which Killbot number one throws back at him, throwing him down where he hits his head on the floor, blood leaking out. Again, the bot says, "Thank you, have a nice day," and then drives off. So Allison, now the final girl, looks at Ferdy as Killbot number one advances, and then she runs away. The synth music kicks up here, and it's very peppy.
Hmm.
Allison makes it to a pet slash toy store called
Uh-huh.
Roger's Little Shop of Pets, which is a
Yeah.
reference to Roger Corman's The Little Shop of Horrors,
Uh-huh.
which was nice.
That was cute.
Yeah. And breaks the glass door to enter. She hides on a shelf as the Killbot enters. This is what we were talking about earlier. She's just
Yes,
hiding there
yes.
with a dog food bag in front of her.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Um, Once Killbot enters, it starts smashing pet cases along the way, freeing snakes and spiders, which of course start crawling all over Allison.
Of
What did you think
course.
of this scene right here?
That was terrible. I am just, again, I'm Texan born and bred, so you would think that critters wouldn't frighten me as much as they do, but I'm literally afraid of all kinds of wildlife. So snakes just reduce me to tears, just the thought of it being in the open. And again, I'm in the wrong place right now. I have a girlfriend that lives up the highway that has been fighting like a snake infestation for like 2 years now. uh and so it's just they reduce me to just a puddle, just like,
I'm sorry. Did you say snake infestation?
oh my gosh, yes. Okay, so she lives like literally just up the highway from here, but like where I live is like a suburb of Houston, right? And
Okay.
so we're really very rural. I don't know if you've ever been to Houston. Houston is actually pretty rural for a big city. Like
Uh,
we have livestock in the city limits. Like people keep, goats, they have their chickens, they have horses, that it's really a thing. And so, but my girlfriend lives in the part that's actually rural, right? Like you
okay.
have this line, and once you cross that line, you're actually in the country.
Okay.
They started having snakes. She hears this ruckus because they also breed dogs. The breed is escaping me, but it's the huge reddish. It's a reddish, big reddish breed, but they're huge.
Okay.
And the dogs are raising a ruckus in the middle of the night, like it's 11:30, 12 o'clock. She goes out there and she sees a snake. Husband happens to be out of town. She got out her gun because she is a soul sister like that, and she shot out. She's like, I don't even know if I got the snake. She's texting me though. She texts me pictures the next day. This thing is huge. She blew a hole right through it. So she got
Jesus.
the two of them that she saw. Almost every night after that, they're out there killing snakes. So apparently, cottonmouths, the water moccasins, and they're poisonous ones too. So I'm
No,
just like,
absolutely not.
it's
Absolutely not.
just yes. And so almost it's literally every week she's telling me about snakes. Either her husband is killed or that she's killed. One of them got in their screen door in the
No.
front, and so she opens up the door and it fell on her, but it left. And I mean, when I say she's telling me this, and I'm just like,
All right, I'm stressed right now. I
yes, this is. They are literally fighting a snake infestation, and there's nothing you can do about them. Like there's because her husband was born and raised right there, true
yeah.
to heart country boy. He's like, there's really not anything we can do except what we're doing.
Or
That's we
move.
can't. Yeah, exactly. And he built their house with his bare hands. They ain't going nowhere. This is
Okay.
Texas. Like, I ain't going nowhere. Y'all gonna leave.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm leaving. I'm already
Yes.
gone. But
Oh, I already told her. You let any kind of snake show up here. He can have the whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm running out with teenagers with the dog. Come on, dog. Come on, baby. You better come on. You're gonna get left because I'm not doing it.
Those snakes are now homeowners and will be paying the mortgage.
Exactly. Yep. Call them. Call them for your light bill.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah, so just
Um,
the thought of them, and then they're all escaped all willy nilly. Like, of course they would be going towards her. That was so horrifying. It was probably one of the most horrifying things in the movie to me.
yeah, yeah. But she manages to stay stoic and stay quiet, which is like I never in a million years. I would
Yeah.
have been like, nope, get off me. I'm right here. Killbot, kill me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I'd have been toast so dead, like
yeah,
just probably from a heart attack from from the snakes.
yeah. But she manages to stay quiet, and finally the bot leaves as it can't find her.
So, but again about that scene, I'm wondering about their programming because the snakes, the pets moving, did not attract his attention or its
Right.
attention. And I'm like, so is it living things or is it just humans? Like, is it not stuff moving? Like, I was
Yeah. Are
really
you like?
kind of wanting a little bit of logical explanation for that, you know?
Yeah. Agree. Agree. Um, so then, as she's walking out, an animal falls down on her, which causes her to scream, which does draw the attention of Killbot number one. She books it down the hallway with the bot in hot pursuit. The Killbot turns a corner and has lost her, but we see she's actually hanging off of the railing. Very clever. I like that a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was cool.
And she must have been great at the pull up bar in gym because I was not,
Right?
and this would not have been me.
Exactly. Oh no, I've always been terrible at any kind of PE stuff. And so yeah, that was remarkable that she could do
And I
that.
like how smart they make her. Not only is like she works and she was like trying to make have a boyfriend and like
Right.
she's yeah like she's able to she's a great shot and she's smart. Like yeah, this is a like when
Exactly.
people talk about Final Girls, they don't really bring up Allison from Chopping Mall very much.
You're right. No, they don't. And I think that they should. Like after seeing it, I'm like,
Yeah,
yes, I like her. I dig it. I do.
yeah, same. But she's hanging so long that she eventually loses her grip and falls down into a tent below her, softening her fall. But now she's Final Girl injured, and she's messed up her ankle, so she's crawling on the floor, and she manages to make it to the paint store, and shielding her face, she Terminators her way through the glass, which is so like I don't. She would have cut herself up so badly.
Yes, of course. Of course. At this point, I'm like, you know what? I'll allow it. Just get out of here.
I mean,
Okay.
she's hopped up on adrenaline now, right? Like
Yeah,
and
exactly.
endorphins and all that sort of stuff. So
Right,
she
right.
basically like you hear about like moms when their kids in danger, they pick up a car. Like that's what
Yes,
she does. She
yes.
walks through this plate glass window and
Exactly,
manages not to cut
exactly.
herself up. And then she's holding that flare that she took from the hardware store earlier. So we're wondering, oh, what she's gonna do. And she starts opening paint cans and spilling them on the floor, also throwing paint thinner as well. And she can hear the Killbot approaching and she yells out, "Come on, you little bastard." And the Killbot crashes into the glass door, but then its tread can't get any traction because of the paint on the ground. Then Allison runs out of the store, slipping on the broken glass, but she turns around and gets the Killbot's attention. It raises its arms and advances, but Allison strikes the flare and throws it into the store, yelling, "Have a nice day," as she does. The store explodes instantly as we see Killbot being blown to smithereens.
Yes, yes, yes. I
So, what
love
did you think of this
flares.
right here?
Well, flares are so unassuming, right? Like you just think about them as when you have auto, trouble in the car. But I actually saw another movie a couple of weeks ago where a flare was used very effectively in a way that I just wouldn't have thought about it, right? Like as
Mhm.
more of a decoy kind of a thing. So
Okay.
like yeah, so like there's this killer, there's a person that's chasing in a car in a vehicle, and so the girl throws the lit flare into the vehicle. And so what you have is not necessarily something that blows up, but something that produces so much smoke that you have to stop driving because you got to find it to get it out, right? So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
flares are awesome. When people use them, I'm just like, and they're also like flammable. They are fire. They can light stuff up, right?
Right,
So
right, right.
I really like flares. I think they're totally underrated. I want to see more flare work.
And the thinking, she's so smart. Like,
Yes.
also, this is another reason why there shouldn't be hardware stores in a mall that have
Well,
flammable liquids and stuff like that.
yes, so flammable. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I think of malls as these fortresses anyway, and I'm talking like the old school malls, like the freestanding ones.
Hmm.
I know nowadays there are more of these, especially around here. Down here, we have more of town centers where stores are linked, but they are outside facing. They're not like the typical the old school malls that we're used to, where they're just kind of everything just opens out to the mall center, and then you might have a back door, right? So
Yeah.
you think about these freestanding malls as these fortresses because they really were. Like, you think about if you had to escape one of them, it would be kind of hard. I mean, there's glass everywhere, but if you're not where the glass is accessible, so it makes total sense that they would be insulated and isolated that way.
Yeah.
And the fact that she would have the presence of mind to think this store is here, it's got this, I can use this to do this thing. I mean, that's brilliant.
And there's a reason why George Romero put Dawn of the Dead in the
Yes,
mall, right?
exactly. Because
Yeah.
it has all of the creature comforts, but it's also hard to get out of and into.
Yeah.
So I love that. Yes, I think
Yeah.
malls are one of my favorite settings. I've never said a story in a mall, but
Uh-huh.
I mean, I won't say I never will. But it's kind of one of those ultimate goals, right? It's like I need to do a mall story, except that there's not a ton of malls left like that
Yeah.
now.
It'd have to be like a retro one or a defunct
Right,
one.
right,
Um,
right.
you were recently on an episode of Ghoulish with Max. I think he released it this past week or so.
Uh huh.
And one of the episodes that he did with somebody else, I forget the name of the person, but was on abandoned facilities.
Yes,
And like, so like setting a story at an abandoned mall or something like that would be
yes.
kind of cool. Well, I had a
Oh,
question
yes,
for
it
you.
would be.
What was the name of your local mall growing up?
Well, so I lived on a bus line because, like, my mama never drove, so we didn't ever have a car.
Okay.
We had to go to places that were easy to get to on the bus, and so we used to go to Sharpstown Mall a lot when I
I've
was
heard of
younger.
Shopstown Mall. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, Sharpstown Mall. So, and so now it's more like this indoor marketplace type of thing. Like, it's not necessarily a mall, so to speak, anymore. And so here they've kind of repurposed a lot of them. So, like right here close to me, there's malls that are still standing that still have stores in them and everything, but they also have that town center. And so it
Mm,
kind of makes me wonder if at some point the actual malls won't be obsolete.
yeah.
And the stores that tend to still be in the mall though are like your big huge ones. Your
Right.
Dillards, your Macy's, your Pennies. The stores that need a lot of space like that.
Yeah. Those anchor stores. Yeah.
Yeah.
My local mall I grew up in Chicago was called the Brickyard Mall.
Hmm.
And yeah, I this movie, I mean, because if you think of like the triumvirate of mall movies, I mean, there'd be Dawn of the Dead, I would
Uh
think.
huh.
I just recently saw Phantom of the Mall with Eric's Revenge. That was a
Yes. Uh
great
huh.
one. And then I would say like Chopping Mall. I don't know. Like we're talking about horror movies right now. We're not talking
Sure.
mall
Sure.
life,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
right? Like I don't know. It's just like we have that holy trilogy of horror mall movies. I think it's pretty
I
cool.
agree.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And the other thing about malls is they are, and I guess this might be why all these random like hardware store and then like the gun store or the sports store for that stuff is that malls are very self-sufficient. And so you do tend to have like you have food, you have clothing, you have furniture, you have entertainment. So like in Dawn of the Dead, when they're stuck in this mall, like it's easy to barricade, but it's
Mhm.
also that you still have stuff in sight. So you can actually live there. It's like this living center.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense that there's this variety of shops there.
Yeah, definitely. So then, um, Allison has been thrown to the ground, but she is alive. She crawls down the corridor and manages to stand up, looking triumphant, as we hear Ferdy off in the distance say, "Hey!" And she looks at him. She looks up at him with a paper roll to the back of his head to stop the bleeding. He's smiling at her. He's alive, and he says, "Nice
Yes.
shots." And they
Yes.
smile and laugh at each other. Then they run into each other's arms, and they have survived the night. the camera pans up and we get shots of the actors' faces and names. And I always like when a movie does this because it gives like a certain sense of like respect to their actors, you
Yes,
know,
yes.
instead of just a name on like the black credit, you know,
Right, right. Yeah.
or black screen, white wording on the credit. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then I love that they use the girl's head exploding for her scene
Yes.
in this credits. At the end of the credits, we actually see the protector robot number one come up to the screen and get one final "Thank you, have a nice day" as the scene
Uh-huh.
fades to black and the movie ends.
Yeah, I
So,
was expecting something else there though. Like I thought he was gonna like shoot the laser at the camera or something crazy, and like I'm still
oh, that
watching.
would
I'm
have
like,
been
okay,
great.
okay, okay, all right. Oh, it's over. Okay.
Well, you say that. I also went at the end when she exploded the paint store, and the robot wasn't on its side, um, and I was expecting it to roll out of the fire and then
Yeah,
just like still be
yeah.
attacking her, you know, like they do in a horror movie at the end of the horror movie. But that didn't
Right,
happen.
right.
But still, yeah. So that's the end of Chopping Mall. So RJ, what did you think of Chopping Mall?
Well, I thought it was good for what it was good for. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it was a funky good time, right? And I like that. I mean, even with these little holes in, I guess backstory. But like you said previously, we really didn't need it. Like that's just my brain kind of going, well, how did they do that, and why did
Yeah.
they do that, and But as far as being entertaining, like I mean, this is what I do. I watch horror movies for entertainment, and it was very entertaining. I really appreciated uh, how the Killbots used a lot of the serial killer techniques, like you mentioned, and so are like things we recognize as this is what the villain does, this is what the killer does.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I don't know. I think that things like Child's Play were like natural offshoots to movies like this, because I don't know that there were lots of oh, let's see. Besides RoboCop, it's like you mentioned before, or even like Terminator. We kind of have these robots. There was the one iRobot,
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah.
and so they veer more into science fiction. But I think that Chopping Mall has a really solid place in this type of in these robot speculative fiction movies, right? I'm glad that I watched it because I'm like, how did I miss this? Like this is my jam. How
Yeah.
did I miss this?
I mean, this is one of those movies where you watch with your friends and you just shut off your
Yeah,
mind, you know, have the popcorn and have your drink,
exactly,
have your pizza and just have fucking fun, right?
exactly,
You can leave the room and go get another beer and not have to pause it, and you probably wouldn't have missed anything. Not much to the story
exactly.
here, and that's fine. It's just fun, like junk food, you know, just a junk food
I
movie, you know.
love that. I love
Yeah,
that. Yes, it is hard junk food, and you gotta have your junk food, man.
yeah, yeah. And as far as like where this kind of lives in the horror pantheon. Like I don't know. I think people maybe it's being found again after it got a DVD release, and then I think there's a Blu-ray release now. Um, I don't know. Like when I hear people talk about the Chopping Mall, I feel like they talk about it like one of the worst movies they've seen or something like that. And I don't think that's the
Uh-huh.
case at all. I think it's obviously not it's not a great movie, but it's a fun fucking movie. And
Sure.
I've seen tons of other movies that are worse than this, and
Oh
you know,
yeah, for
yeah, I
sure. I have to wonder how much horror they've actually seen and how
mhm,
far back.
right.
Yeah, like I'm always like, okay, like I would never ever gatekeep who gets to be a real horror fan. I would never do that. That's like gross. But I do wonder when I hear people say those kinds of things, I do wonder how much have you seen? How much have you actually seen? Like,
Right.
and what are like how far do you go? Do you go back all the way to the classics, the black and white classics? You go back to the 1930s, the 40s, 50s? Because apparently you haven't seen a lot of that. If you're saying that this is like the worst, and then have you seen the stuff that came out of the 80s? Like this really goes perfectly in line with those other movies.
Yeah.
Like this goes to me perfectly in line. It's not as heavy though. And I think that that's because the killers are not human, so we're not also invested in those human emotions on their side, like trying to figure out their motivations. It's easier
Right.
to just say, well, it's a machine. and machines do stuff. We don't always know what they're going to do. That's just it. With humans, though, it's kind of like, but why did he do this? And why did she do that? And, so I think that this movie fits firmly within the genre. Like, it's got its place, it does what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, this is one of like this is a great like crowd movie, and it's just fun to watch. Is I don't revisit movies very often, just because I am a collector. I've said this on the podcast a lot, but like I'm a collector of all things, including movies, and I don't mean by like physical media as well, but just like the
Hmm.
experience of watching a
Right,
new
right.
movie. And
Hmm.
so if I've seen a movie and I've experienced already, I may have loved it or not. I'm like, great, I had you for that time. Now I'm gonna go see another movie, right? So like,
Hmm.
but so that's allowed me to kind of have like a really wide knowledge base of other movies. But
Uh-huh.
there are certain movies like Halloween being one of them. I always return to it. But Chopping Mall is one of those as well, where I can return to it and watch it again and again a couple times a year and still really really enjoy it. It's a
Yeah.
blast.
Yeah, that says a lot. I think that I'm gonna watch it again.
Mm,
Which is I do that because if I'm trying to go for a deeper analysis, because I do like how they set Allison up as a final girl that I don't. I mean, even on the academic circuits, like I just don't see a lot about her
mm,
as a final girl, and I'm like, but the setup was actually pretty classic. This kind of follows the format. This is what you do. You
yeah.
introduce her, usually sure, her appearance belies the idea that she can be this type. Then you develop her character where you find out these little bitty things that
Mm,
actually tell you, oh, maybe she is kind of a badass, right? Even though we didn't think she was. And so
mm,
I want to revisit it kind of and look at it through that lens because I want to be able to write about this, talk about this, right? This is a
yeah.
final girl. She totally belongs in this discussion.
I love to hear that. And you also see like she is also set up to be like the virginal girl. Like
Exactly.
she's not having
Yeah.
sex there, right?
Yeah, I forgot that part. That's also why she was allowed to be the final girl.
Yeah, exactly. So then, RJ, what we typically do here is we rate the movie based on five upside down crosses. So I know sometimes people don't like to rate them, or your rating could be different today than it will be yesterday, or what than it was yesterday, or what it'll be tomorrow. But just today, how you're feeling about Chopping Mall? How many upside down crosses would you give it?
I would totally give it 3.
Okay,
I
that's a
would totally
solid
give it
movie.
3.
That's a
Yeah,
solid
it was
movie.
solid. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. I'm gonna go up a little bit higher than you, just slightly. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars because I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Like I said, for all the reasons I already said, it's just a fun party movie. You put this on with any crowd, any horror crowd, right? You put it on,
Right.
you're gonna have a good time. Right?
Yes.
So like
Agreed.
have it on in the background on your Halloween party or something. So
Exactly. That is what it's perfect for, right?
yeah. Okay, so RJ, what we do next here is, in order for you to be fully absolved of your horror movie sin, can you tell that I used to be Catholic? Um,
Yes.
I will now. I will be suggesting three movies to you in the vein of Chopping Mall, and you'd have to watch them, and then hopefully you come back in a future show, and we can talk about those movies and some other movies. So let me go ahead and give you those. So the first one I would say is Maximum Overdrive from 1986, which is Stephen King's one and only movie that he directed. Eve of Destruction from 1991, and Westworld from 1973, which some say was had a bit of an influence on John Carpenter when it came to Halloween, because you had
Okay.
this like this uh, unkillable monster coming after you, sort of thing, kind of
Hmm.
like Michael Myers. So those are the three movies that I would recommend to you. So
Okay.
RJ, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the show. I had an absolute blast. It's so much fun talking to you. I hope we can do it again. Um,
Yes. Yes.
so, if once again, could you please let my listeners know how they can follow you and how they can support you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter a lot. So at R Jackson Joseph. Um, I also have a website that should be going live almost any day now at rondajacksonjoseph.com.
Awesome. And if you'd like to follow me, you can follow the show on Twitter at MHCPod. You can follow us on Instagram at My Horror Confessional. If you'd like to email the show, you can email me at myhorrorconfessional@gmail.com. We also have a Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, you can find us on patreon.com/myhorrorconfessional. For the next, so we're doing it for a total of 6 months. We've already done it for 2 months. So we have 4 more months where we're going to be donating all of the all of the pledges from my patrons to organizations that support women's right to abortion and women's
Nice.
reproductive rights. So the first month we did Planned Parenthood. Last month we did the Bridget Alliance, and what they do is they help women get access to abortions, either if it's by buying them plane tickets or
Ooh,
food or paying for their hotels while they're traveling to get an abortion, or paying for childcare so that they can go and get the access they need. And so that's who we donated. We were able to donate $120 last month to them, and $120
oh,
the
nice.
previous month to Planned Parenthood. And for this coming month, I'm going to be opening up in the Patreon, if in case anybody has any organizations that they'd like to suggest. Obviously, we'll look them up on charity, whatever the website is, to make sure that they're legit. And then if so, we can go ahead and do that. So anyway, if that's something that you're interested in, please visit us on Patreon. The music was done by Taylor Fox. You can follow her on Instagram at the Taylor Fox. Her album will be dropping this month, or yeah, I believe this month, by her group Great Hag. And the art was done by my friend Cap Mikey. You can follow him on Instagram at the_Captain_Mikey. Maybe underscore art. I'll fix that if I need to. But that was the show. Once again, RJ, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you had fun. I had a blast.
Yes, oh, I did. Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
No problem. Thank you. That was the show, and we'll talk to you guys next week.